Afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to talk about prepping your raised garden bed for the next season. Here's just a sample of the products that we're going to be, and tools that we're going to be using today. I have a rake. I have my gardening gloves, which are actually just like work gloves that you would use for construction purposes. I bought at Home Depot. We have Neptune's Harvest Organic Fish and Seaweed Fertilizer, which is a 2-2-1 liquid fertilizer. I'm sorry, a 2-3-1 liquid fertilizer that needs to be mixed with water. So I've got my little sprayer in the back. And we're going to be using Trifecta Plus, which is a 5-10-4. You can purchase that through MI Gardener as our solid fertilizer. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to start by removing the old last year's growth from the beds. So let's get to it. By the way, in case you're wondering, this is a horrible abuse of these types of snips. They're not really made for anything as thick as even twine. These are made to cut like delicate branches and things off of like seedlings and tiny flowers and just delicate work. And what I'm using it for is definitely not delicate work. But since I have sort of abused these over the last year, I figure, why stop now? Okay, with that bit taken care of, now the next thing to do is to kind of rake what we have sort of flat, and that'll also help make sure I didn't miss any large weeds or roots. Normally, a covering of leaves wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but I don't want to work a whole bunch of these into the dirt and then not have them biodegrade properly before spring, so I'm going to remove the majority of these. Alright, not quite pretty as a picture, but I think you get the idea. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be exactly flat. One of the reasons I wanted to flatten things out is because I went with a core gardening method, using a partially decomposed straw bale on the inside of the center of the bed, right along this chunk here, and over yonder, to act as a repository for like water and whatnot to build up and kind of act as like a big sponge. That seemed to work okay, but not as well as I would have hoped, mainly because, again, I suspect that the blossom end rot issues that I ran into last summer were a result of insufficient watering. And if the core was well watered and was actually doing what it was supposed to, you would think that wouldn't have happened. Now, it could just be that we didn't have enough water to recharge the cores, and I didn't actually notice that there was a consistent issue with blossom end rot until probably, I don't know, the beginning of August or so. And because of that, I started trying to fix the issue, but by then it had started to be a consistent problem, and I wasn't really able to resolve it satisfactorily before the end of the season. So this year, I guess I'll try again and just make sure I stay up on top of the watering better. And if that works, then I know that it was just insufficient water to recharge the cores as required. I will be installing cores in the beds again, and we'll talk about that later, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, now that the leaves are removed, well, most of them, I guess, the next step is to add the dry fertilizer. Alright, again, the fertilizer we're going with today is Trifecta Plus. You can get it from MI Gardener's website. I put it in these little containers because these little containers have screw-on caps that also double as a means to measure out your fertilizer. And if you do like custom blends of fertilizer, like I do a custom blend for berries, then these are really useful. I want to say these were $15-ish on Amazon when I bought them, which was last spring. And I really enjoy these. These are, they definitely make the process more convenient than trying to scoop out a specified amount out of a bag or what have you. Because with these, literally, you just crack it open, you pour in your requisite amount. This is about 1 cup, as you can see there. I'm probably going to go with a little bit more than this. just because I am not planting anything in these for months after this, and I just want to make sure the beds have enough time to integrate everything fully and what have you, and also to just be you know, thoroughly nutrified, I guess. Fertilized would be a better word. So anyway, to sprinkle it, you're just going to do something like this. Generally, it's better to stay upwind. That way you're not breathing it in. Not a windy day today, so I'm not terribly worried about it. I'm probably going to do, I don't know, probably, I don't know, a cup for every 5 square feet the bed is long. So I've got 10-foot beds here, so I'm going to do 3 cups, I think, to make sure I have adequate coverage. One other thing you'll notice about this is that the soil level in the bed is kind of low, not just in the middle, but along the edges as well. The middle is going to be mainly due to the core decomposing as the season went on. The edges is because this was the first bed that we put dirt in, and we wanted to make sure that we had adequate dirt for the rest of the beds, so we were trying to kind of spread things out evenly, and we didn't do it evenly, I guess is the best way to put it. So yeah, we're gonna have to get more dirt, which I'm gonna have to do anyway because I'm getting more beds, and we'll refill this, and we'll go over that later too. Alright, so that's 2 cups. Now if you were gonna plant like right away, this is probably about the right amount of fertilizer. You might go a little more. I'm gonna go a whole nother cup, which this is not too much. This is fine. Again, if you're not planting in the bed right away. If you're going to plant in the bed right away, go a little lighter. We're going to integrate this into the soil too, though, so I'm not worried about it. That looks good to me. I did a very similar regimen before I added the winter rye to the other beds, which you can kind of see in that one over there. Just didn't go quite as heavy with the fertilizer because I was planting it right away. Okay, now, next up is liquid fertilizer. And for the liquid fertilizer, again, we're going with Neptune Harvest, fish and seaweed, and both of these fertilizers are fully organic. Not that I'm specifically trying to be organic, just I think that when we can be organic, I think that we sort of have a moral imperative to do so. There's no reason to use chemicals unless, you know, well, clarification, there's no reason to use artificial additives and whatnot unless you kind of have to. Like if you were dealing with bad topsoil or something and you didn't have time, and you really wanted to, or you really needed to do something for like a, I don't know, food scarcity reason or something like that, maybe don't care about organic, but I try to do organic, so, and that's what I do. You do you. We're all different, and it's all right. All right, so a word about this Neptune's Harvest stuff. The recipe, now the directions, say to use 1/8 of a cup per gallon. This is about a gallon of water. The problem with 1/8 of a cup per gallon is that, again, I'm not planting in this right away, and you use 1/8 of a cup per gallon if you're gonna just spray it on the dirt and plant into it and whatnot pretty quickly, or just as like a periodic fertilizer throughout the year, so it's okay to do that around plants that already exist. Since I'm not doing that, I've upped the dosage here to probably about 1/3 of a cup, because again, I'm just gonna let this sit. It's supposed to rain in the next day or two, and once it rains, this will percolate down into the soil. Yeah, and actually I forgot to mix in the dry fertilizer first, so let's do that, and then we'll get to this. Good thing I'm talking about this out loud. So to work this in, we're just going to kind of do what we did before. This is why I like doing multiple passes with a rake, by the way. So, funny thing about these tags, the tags work fine. We have birds in this area that specifically thought it was funny to, well, I don't know if they thought it was funny. It amused them anyway, to take the tags out of the ground and just sort of throw them all over. So as you can see, like, well, maybe you can't see it, but I can see it from here. In the brassica bed, none of the tags were left in the ground. And in fact, the tomato bed was one of the only ones where the tags were consistently left in place. So, but anywhere that the birds had easy access to land in the bed and then to play around, they did. So we ended up with these just sort of all over. You might want to go with metal tags as opposed to these little plastic ones, because A, the metal is going to last longer than the plastic. The metal, in my opinion, looks better than the plastic. And also the birds will have a much harder time removing them. It will not be impossible because some of these birds are very big. I want to say we had hawks in the yard doing this, as well as different things like grackles and crows, and I think even the occasional blue jay would come down and take the tags out and make a mess of things. So anyway, just keep that in mind. All right, so when you're mixing this stuff in, you don't need to do a whole lot. You're just trying to work it into the dirt. And I found a root that I missed. Ah, yes, this was from one of the tomato plants that died early on. It got decently big, as you can see from the diameter there, but then it died. Okay. Anyway, so getting back to the fertilizer, you're going to work it into the soil. Not a lot. We're not trying to disturb anything past the first inch or two, with the exception of the center where it, it dipped down, and I'm leveling that out. The goal is just to kind of get it under there and where it's going to do the plants, the most good, since you don't just want all your fertilizer to just sit on the top when you're preparing the bed for, the next season. When you're doing your periodic fertilizing, that's usually fine, because you'll just top dress, and that's not a problem. Also, since the plants are in the ground, you can't really do this kind of work generally, so whatever you're capable of doing is probably going to be okay. Some stuff. Okay, anyway, just go back and forth a few more times. You don't really want to disturb the soil structure if you can help it. You just kind of want to get the stuff sort of integrated. All right, that's enough with the rake. Now, one thing you might wonder about the rake is why it's got these blue things on it, and that is because this is a collapsible rake, which I can't show you because it's not able to take the gloves off for it. Let's see if I can get this to come apart. All right, well, I promise it collapses. It's not collapsing right now, but it does. I'll worry about that later. As a tool review is not the point of this video. Another thing that's worth noting, if you're going to put your rake somewhere, and this should seem obvious, do not just do this. Don't do that. Not because I'm worried about you, stepping on the handle, but because, the tines can do a number on you if you're not careful. So best practice would be to lean it up against something or thoroughly remove it from the area in which you're working. Best case scenario, you do both. In my case, I'm going to put it over here because over here, it's not in the way. All right, now, liquid fertilizer time, for real this time. Okay, a note about the liquid fertilizer. This stuff has the funk. It smells like rotting, decomposing fish. So if you value your neighbors, do this on a day where the weather's going to be bad or cold, because it takes a day or two for the funk to kind of waft out of the area and to get out of the soil enough that it's not a problem. Now, I've never used this sprayer before, so hopefully this doesn't explode and spray this stuff all over me, because if it did that, well, that would be amusing for you, and I'll include it in the video if that happens. I'm really hoping it doesn't, because like I said, this stuff smells pretty bad. So anyway, if you haven't used a pump sprayer before, you got to build it, which involves inserting a tube here and then screwing this little thing right here down. And then you're going to insert the nozzle on the end of this. You got to screw that down right there. And then you got to fill it with your stuff, in which case I did the liquid fertilizer first. That way when I added the water, it sort of mixed it all up. If you need to mix it again, you can just do this sort of thing. Just make sure that you put this thing in and you screw it down until it is secure before you tilt it. To get these ready to work with, you take them from their locked position, you go like this, and then you can just pick it up, and then you just pump it. You're going to pump it until the resistance is pretty noticeable. And if you get to a point where the resistance doesn't get noticeable, something is loose. All right, then you're going to put it back into the position where you can lock it again, and then you just lock it. All right, now let's see how this works. Okay, that is too much of a mist. I want it more of a spray. To change that, you twist the nozzle a little bit. That's about what I want right there. Okay. And then you're just going to spray the bed. And I'm going to do this. Let me try adjusting that again. A little too much. Back. Still too much. Go back. A little bit more. A little bit less. I think I like my other sprayer more. I bought this one to do my copper fungicide and whatnot, but the other one is all the way over by the house and in the garage somewhere and would need cleaned out, so I just figured I'd use this one. Anyway, this is about the kind of spray you want. Probably a, I don't know, 45-degree angle spray. And then you're just going to spray everything down. You're just going to do this until there's no water left in your tank. If I can figure out how to do it in the editor, I'll fast forward through this part. You'll periodically have to pump this up again, by the way. But all in all, this process should not take that long. A few minutes. Since I'm having problems with the sprayer, I'm going to do this pretty close to the dirt. It keeps trying to change the angle that the cone is spraying at, so this will be fine for the trees because you want to find mist for that. And for this, it'll work. It's just not ideal. Again, if possible, stand downwind. I'm currently, or I mean upwind. Upwind, definitely stand upwind. I'm currently standing downwind like an idiot. Don't do what I'm doing. Well, do some of what I'm doing, but not this particular thing where I'm standing in the wrong spot. So I'm just getting this ready so that I can plant more tomatoes come spring. I do love tomatoes. What's your favorite kind of tomato? I think mine currently, Sundrop's a pretty good one. We're going to plant some of those this year. Didn't do them last year because as far as cherry tomatoes go, those are sort of basic, but they're a classic for a good reason. They're very effective and good. They grow well, they make lots of tomatoes, and they taste amazing. So, hard to beat that. Yes, thank you, sprayer. That is clearly what I wanted you to do. Now, you might see some things in here like this. They look a bit like eggs. They are not eggs. They are old tomatoes that never ripened, which is fine. Since they didn't ripen, most of the seeds will be, it's almost guaranteed that the seeds aren't viable, so I'm not worried about that sprouting. Now, there are a couple in there that look like they might have ripened or got close enough that I might have to worry about it, but I don't have to worry about it because once I'm done with this and it rains in the next couple of days, I'm going to come out here with a tarp and just cover this bed. And then this bed is just going to sit like that until probably mid-April, where I will uncover it. I might actually uncover it beginning of April. No. Actually, maybe what I'll do is I'll uncover it mid-March, and then after a week or so, once things may start to germinate, I'll check. If things start to germinate in the bed, like weed seeds and things like that, I will then put the tarp back on and choke everything out again. And that's an effective way, actually, of getting rid of weeds. I made the mistake with this Neptune's Harvest stuff of using some of this when I was seed starting indoors. And it made the bed smell, not the bed, the seeds, like the seed trays just smell awful for probably 2 weeks. And every time I watered it, it would get bad again because it was in an enclosed space and couldn't really air out. It's not ideal. So if you're going to use it for seed starting, make sure you've got some ventilation in the room you do the seed starting in. Now, because it is still a little unseasonably warm, and good thing too, because my boiler broke last night, I'm not going to cover things up right away in the hopes that some things may still germinate, and if they do, then the winter cold can kill them properly. And see, look, 2/3 of the way done. This really doesn't take that long. It's definitely worth doing. I used a sprayer like this to spray beneficial nematodes all over the yard in an attempt to get rid of some grubs that we had last September. 2 problems with what I did. Problem number 1, if you're going to do a nematode treatment, you got to do it in like August generally to get rid of grubs. It tends to work best then, and I did it like mid to late September. Oh look, the wind changed again. Cool. And the second problem, of course, would be that I bought the wrong nematodes. So I was able to get rid of baby fleas, but not the grubs. I ended up having to go with an inorganic solution to get rid of the grubs, which did seem to help, thankfully. But as I noted previously, I applied it a little too late, So it would have had a better effect had I, done it when you were supposed to. First time I've had a yard that had a grub problem, so it's kind of interesting. And it didn't happen the previous year, which was also interesting. Boiler is going to take a couple days to get repaired, which is unfortunate. I was going to maybe do some seed starting videos soon, and I was going to show how to do a quick and dirty setup on how to, start like a seed starting station and things like that. I was going to do that all indoors in my basement because the shed's not done being insulated yet. And yeah, it is now about 60 degrees inside the house, and the temperature is dropping. So 60 degrees isn't bad, but by tomorrow it's going to be mid 50s to low 50s, and that's not great. Cats will be fine. My wife and I will make it all right, but a little worried about my tarantula. We'll see. I've got some places I can take her to kind of wait out the cold, which ironically I had to do last year. Last year we had problems with our gas lines, and those needed to be replaced, and that took like 3 days, and it was a lot colder outside then. It was middle of January. Or no, clarification, this year is the middle of January. Last year it was the middle of February. And middle of February here last year, it was maybe 10 degrees outside. It was a lot worse. Boil water to keep the temperature in the house not terrible. Had 3 different electrical heaters going. It was just a whole thing. Almost done here. Should be noted, the narrower your spray is, the more water comes out of the sprayer at the same time, and the quicker you'll go through your stuff. I narrowed it because it kept trying to spray in like a huge angle, and yeah. Anyway, so almost done here. But I think you get the gist. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful, and until we talk again.